Sure.
You're choosing between the two, whether
Right.
you're going to transfer them to Delta or Air France.
Mhm.
And Delta's almost always more miles. Hey everybody, welcome to the Abroaders Travel Podcast, your weekly meetup with thousands of entrepreneurs, hustlers, creators, nomads, ninjas, wanderers, and world changers, all seeking to build the skills and connections to live a life without borders. If you want to learn more about what we do or download our entire podcast archive, check out the website, abroaders.com. Happy Wednesday morning and welcome to episode number 86 of the Abroaders Podcast. I'm Eric here in Medellin, Colombia with AJ. And today we are going to be talking a little bit about Colombia, about Medellin. Hopefully help some of you guys decide to come down here and work or live. Really enjoying it here. And then we've also got some news and updates and some award redemptions that we had a huge week this week for booking awards, both for ourselves and for a couple of our customers. And so we had some interesting things that we learned. And so I want to run through a few of those as well. But yeah, let's start out. We've got a bunch of new people on the podcast. I think you told me right before we started we were close to 8,000 downloads for the month.
Yeah. Which for us that's a nice uptick. That's more than we would normally have. Actually, this is by far and away our biggest
double, man.
biggest
Yeah,
month.
it's exciting. So we're recording here at August 31st, so it's Monday. AJ and I are both going to be traveling when this airs on Wednesday. AJ's headed back to Michigan, and I'm headed to Madrid, Spain. We're going to talk a little bit about the award tickets that we got for those trips in a few minutes here. One thing I wanted to mention, though, for everybody that is just joining or listening to their first couple podcasts, if you're interested in getting back and sort of finding out some of the basics, you might want to check out episodes 2 through 8. Episode 11, those are all kind of on like the basics of earning and redeeming points. And then episodes 16 to 18 are about the transferable currencies. And then there's an episode, I think number 20 is sort of about minimizing your costs. So if you're just picking this up, maybe some of the stuff we're going to go over today with these redemptions is going to be a little bit fast if you don't have the foundation. So definitely check out some of the early episodes. Forgive us for the audio quality and production quality.
And to find the links, just go to the show notes today, which is abroaders.com/Columbia. And that's Columbia, the country, with an O, not an U. This is not where University of South Carolina is. I honestly don't know if it's South Carolina University or whatever. Don't really care. Anyone down there that's a Gamecock, if I offended you, not sorry about that. Anyways, getting into some news and updates. So speaking of transferable currencies, we actually did a lot of moving and shaking with Amex points recently, and we did a little bit of transferring to British Airways. And just to remind everyone, you got about a month left to transfer your Amex membership rewards points to British Airways. And the reason you've got a month to do that is because if you do it after a month, I believe it's in October is when that kicks in.
October 1st.
There's going to be a 25% devaluation of the transfer rate. So right now it's 1-to-1. You have one Amex point. You can turn that into one British Airways point. Obvious, that is, and in a little over a month, it's going to be 1 will turn into 0.75. So as far as that goes, we can talk a little bit later about maybe why you would do that, why you wouldn't, but that is some news. Next piece of news is Alaska has an award sale, and for details, just check out the show notes today, and we've got a link to actually their page, and it's actually pretty straightforward. You can just pick cities you want to go to, and there's pretty big discounts on award flights. One that sticks out, Baltimore to LAX, so cross-country flight, 10,000 one way. Not a bad deal when you consider domestic redemptions are usually horrible values. And there's some other interesting ones. And Alaska's kind of an interesting airline too, because they fly to some places that other airlines don't.
They also have some partners that most airlines don't. The really cool thing about Alaska Miles is that they're not in one of the main alliances. They're partners with Delta. They're partners with American. We're partners with British Airways, Cathay Pacific, I believe Etihad. So there's a whole bunch of different really premium airlines that you can take. And Alaska lets you do stopovers on a one-way ticket.
Yeah, and it's pretty interesting. If anyone really has deep pockets but still is interested in saving money, Emirates first class you can book with Alaska. And Alaska's got a promo on buying miles right now, which isn't a great deal. I think it comes out to you buy them at 2.1 cents per point.
Alaska Miles.
Yes, Alaska Miles is a promo, 40%. And if you actually bought a revenue ticket for the Emirates suite class or whatever it is, I think it would cost about $25,000 round trip for what would be the equivalent of like $3,600 in Alaska points you could buy. So
Wow. Okay. Yeah. I mean,
don't know if any of our listeners spend $30,000 on flights, but if you do, give that a peek.
Speaking of Alaska miles, there's a couple of really good, easy ways to get Alaska miles much, much cheaper right now. We mentioned this last week, but the Starwood preferred guests, both the business and the personal card, are up to $30,000. You can find those links in the show notes as well. Those transfer to Alaska
with a bonus.
With a bonus. So if you get both of the cards, that means you're going to have 60,000 Starwood points. That's going to turn into 75,000 Alaska miles. And you can also get 25,000 Alaska miles by signing up for the Bank of America Alaska Airlines card. You get that on approval. There's no spending requirement. If you get the card, you've got the points. So that's a relatively straightforward way to get 100,000 Alaska miles and really have some pretty cool redemption opportunities to use those. One other quick piece of news before we jump into some talk about Medellin. If you got the 100,000 point American Express offer, it was for the Amex Personal Platinum card, and it was a targeted bonus. It lit up on Flyer Talk, and Ryan was kind enough to let us know, sent us along a message in the broader support channel, just shot along an email to let us know that this offer was going on. And so we were able to get the message out to everybody. And I know for a fact we had at least 15 people confirm that they got the offer. So that's 1.5 million points that are going to be earned in short order by those folks. So a couple of things. If you did get this offer, please check in with us, look at the show notes, and there's a link where you can let us know that you got the card. And we're going to send out a bunch of information, number one, about how you can use these points effectively, get the most savings, but also there are a ton of huge benefits that come with this card. It's a $450 annual fee card, but if you do it right, the first year should cost you less than $50. And you're going to get a lot more than $50 value out of the
some
benefits.
Differences to the way this card works from the business card. For example, adding card holders. So if you've got a spouse or a friend or something, as opposed to the business card, how much is it to add a card holder? It's absurd, isn't it?
Yeah. So the difference here is that you can add 3 card holders for one flat rate of $175, I believe. And each of those card holders gets access to the Priority Club lounges. They get access to Delta when they're flying on Delta. And so they get a couple of really nice benefits that come with the Platinum. If you've got the business version, which is what AJ and I had before this 100K offer that I was able to get this week, it's like $300 to get an extra card. So it's almost the same price as the other card. So this can make it much more affordable. If you did get this offer, that's one thing you can consider to sort of spread out the cost, is if you've got a few friends that are also interested in getting that lounge access and you trust them with a credit card, you can get a couple extra cards, up to 3 for a flat rate of $175.
Yeah. One thing to keep in mind, though, if anyone is going to play that little trick, don't think that you can go ahead and get your buddies a card and then cancel it if you don't quite trust them, because the card's got to be active to enter the lounges. Because I actually learned the hard way. I'm trying to think where I was. I had an Amex business card, just wasn't really using, and it wasn't even active anymore. And I just thought that would grant me access, and they swiped it and said it was no longer active. So that didn't cut it.
So just one more time, special thanks again to Ryan for sending along that 100K offer. We try and stay on top of as many offers as we can, but sometimes things that happen like overnight. This was a one-day thing. It was alive for less than 24 hours. And I just wanted to share a little bit because he's actually on a pretty awesome trip. He said he saved $5,222.60 on their recent 408-day trip through South America, including Ecuador, Chile, Argentina, Brazil, and Colombia, and Mexico. And they've been traveling since October of last year, so 2014, and they are working out at 7.8 cents a point on recent American redemption from South America to Mexico.
That's crushing it.
So yeah, just really phenomenal performance, obviously with the points that Ryan's earned, and he did a really great thing by getting us the information so we could get it out to so many people to get signed up. So thanks again, Ryan. I hope you have a great rest of your trip, and definitely if any of you guys out there hear about good deals, shoot us an email, support@abroaders, and we'll try and let everybody know.
Absolutely.
All right, man. So let's talk about Medellin a little bit. This is a place that I was visiting about, almost 5 years ago. I was 2010. I came through Medellin, and it was sort of my first backpacking trip. And I knew that this was a place I wanted to come back to. I stopped in Cartagena and I stopped in Bogota as well in Colombia, and both of those places were interesting as well. but the atmosphere here is definitely different from a lot of other places in, around the world and also in South America that I've been. What have your impressions been so far?
Man, absolutely the same thing. Is I was pleasantly surprised, and I had such high expectations because I've got a good friend from Colombia. She was telling me how much I was going to love it. You've been here before. A lot of people in the Dynamite Circle, which we're members of, have talked about how great Medellin is. Our friend Danny, we're here visiting, has been here for 3 years when he kind of wasn't planning on being here for 3 years. So I had really high expectations, and still the city has surpassed my expectations. And Medellin has now kind of thrust itself into a city I think I'll probably spend at least a few months next year.
Yeah, I think so too. We were kind of talking about that rotation of possibly Rio from January through February, March. Medellin during late spring, at least northern hemisphere. So move from Rio up to Medellin, really recover from Carnival, get some serious work done, which we definitely, I think, have found it's been pretty easy to do.
Great work-life balance if you want to use that lingo, man. We've gotten a lot done and we've had a lot of fun, man.
Yeah. And the other thing that's nice is it's a good counterbalance in terms of climate as well. It's it's been probably in the 70s for Fahrenheit folks, mid-20s in Celsius, and just like really predictable, nice climate.
Yeah, it has gotten warm, but it doesn't kill you. Maybe it gets up to 90, but it's not, and that's only when it just gets really warm. And it cools down at night.
And Danny says it's like this all year round, pretty much.
Yeah, exactly. It's the weather's great. I mean, it's pretty cool for if you haven't been here, haven't seen a picture. The city is essentially an elevated valley. So it's a valley that happens to be about a mile high, and then you've got the mountains that go even higher up and create this kind of bowl effect that the city kind of rests in and kind of goes up along the mountainsides.
Yeah, so everything is sort of on a hill here. We're on a serious hill on the side of this mountain. And it's kind of interesting because we're in like one of what I think is probably one of the nicer, more upper middle class neighborhoods.
Yeah, I think this is one of the more affluent neighborhoods in the city.
And so so the other night, AJ and I went out and did a little bit of exploring. We took some public transit, and the subway, transit system is excellent here. Really easy, really simple. And we went up to this neighborhood, which is just below a park called RV. I'm going to put a link in the show notes to kind of show you the metro and how to get where we went. But this was a place that I visited in 2010, and they had just built these 2 giant libraries on this hill.
Massive.
Really like impressive, modern looking buildings. And this is like, what would be equivalent to a favela in Brazil.
Sure.
A very, very poor neighborhood. Houses kind of constructed of like cement blocks and mud bricks. So not a place where people have a ton of money. And they basically built an extension of the metro line up to the top of this hill, which, I would imagine it would take hours to get up to.
Yeah, the form of it's a cable car. It's essentially a gondola, and there's a few stops on the way up. It's really cool. So you hop on this thing, it maybe seats 8 to 10 people per cable car, and they're just kind of cycling around. And I believe there's 2 or 3 stops on the way up. And if you take it all the way up, that is to the place that the libraries Erik was talking about. And it's really interesting because one of the guys we met up there when we were having just some great street food, you had like a steak for like $1.50, and I had chorizo that was amazing. He was saying like 20 years ago that place was really bad. And
very
that's kind of
very dangerous.
The history of Medellin. I really do think that the city has progressed faster than the bad reputation is being left behind, where the city it feels so safe. I feel safer here than I do in home in Detroit, and I'm in a nice part of Detroit's kind of a bad city, but I'm in a nice neighborhood. I felt extremely safe here, but the city still does have a little bit of a reputation, and I don't think it's quite fair.
Yeah, it's not quite just, certainly there's a legacy that it takes time for people to forget about a lot of nasty stuff. And there are still, certainly some issues in Colombia. One of the things that I thought was really interesting, so in this park, it's the type of place that if you didn't know, and I had a pretty good idea that it was safe because of my trip here last time, and sort of as soon as we got off the metro line, it was very obvious that there was no danger. There were little kids running around everywhere, families all over the place, and it was just really, really interesting to me because unlike some of the places closer to where the expats hang out, this is our neighborhood over here. Nobody really offered us anything, Nobody tried to sell us anything. Everybody just looked at us like, who are these guys? And what are they doing up here? I definitely got the feeling that not too many foreigners or visitors wander up to this part of Medellín.
Yeah, I think not. Definitely, we're getting it. Not getting mean mugged, but people just like, what are these guys doing? What are these guys doing up here?
Just baffled by it.
But a point that you made that I thought was really interesting was, so we're in an area that is financially poor. People don't have much money. And like you said, no one was trying to sell us anything, in particular drugs. If you want to play the stereotype game, you're in a supposed rough area of town or a poor area of town, drug dealers, that type of scene. Total opposite. In the most affluent part of town with the nicest restaurants and bars, whenever we go out, it's like 35 times. It's the exact same progression. Do you want gum? Do you want a cigarette? Cocaine, marijuana, like clockwork, man. Every gum vendor is trying to sell coke as well.
That was the other really interesting conversation that I had last weekend. So there was a kid. We're in this spot that's much more populated by tourists, expats. A lot of the kids from the hostels end up in this kind of bar district, and that's a place where listen, like the Colombian people are phenomenal. I really, really feel comfortable, and I love the people here. But you definitely will, if you look like you're a foreigner in this part of town, people will under their breath ask you if you want cocaine or weed when they're trying to sell you cigarettes and gum. And so that, like if that's something that's going to creep you out and really not be okay, this might not be your place. Mm-hmm. But what really blew me away is I got to talking to this kid who maybe was like 16 or 17 years old and was kind of running this hustle. And I asked him about, what the why the cocaine, how much better was the money? Like what kind of percentage of what he was making was coming from selling pot and from cocaine. And it's clearly still got a financial grip on this place, to the fact that there's that many people that know that, the gringos, if they ask the right one, are going to buy something like that. Sure. And, the kid even basically explained like, okay, so the police will take it away and, I'll be in big trouble if I get caught. So it's stashed somewhere else. I've got crappy stuff. I've got good stuff. And so it's, it's pretty interesting. Definitely, still a big problem in Colombia with drugs. And I think that's something you absolutely need to avoid. If you're a tourist, you need to be really, really careful with stuff that's illegal in Colombia, because I think it's a very serious deal if you get caught as a tourist.
I mean, I think if you ask the law enforcement here about it, they've seen so many bad things that they do not sympathize much for somebody that's a part of that economy, because they've seen just so much crazy shit happen. And a lot of people here, I mean, it's much better now, but a lot of people here have been affected in severe ways over the last 15, 20 years.
Yeah.
And so it definitely not the place to get caught buying cocaine.
Yep. Well, and I mean, I definitely don't want to leave on the note of, this drug issue in Colombia, because that has been so far behind the scenes of any of our, real experience here, besides people, knowing that there's people out there that can go grab you some. Right. There is an amazing culture. There's an amazing, kind of wealth of experiences to have here in Medellin. I'm kind of excited about the international jam at the end of the song, because the music in the different bars when you're out at night is truly exceptional here as well. So,
well, one final point on Medellin, a thing I've noticed is socially, it's relatively easy to be integrated. We're kind of cheating a little bit because we're staying with Danny, who knows the area, but it really would be as simple as going down to the basketball court and just asking if you can play basketball. For example,
Aren't you a member now?
I'm now a member of the Medellin Basketball Association. I'm on Facebook right now, and I just see that Andrew Macia and Pablo Patino just posted some activity on pickup games. It's just a really connected area where it seems like everyone's doing social things and very open and relatively organized too.
There's also a lot of free parks. So the government made a big investment in parks and recreation stuff in Medellin. There's a ton of open recreation space with football or soccer fields and basketball and just all kinds of space, and it's totally free. You just walk in, assuming the tax bases or donations are supporting it.
It's definitely a counter argument to public spaces can't be maintained and respected, because, man, these are really nice places, and they're not they're not state of the art. That you can tell they've been around for a little while, and the basketball hoops are in good shape. The soccer goals and nets are intact. I mean, it's definitely working for them.
Yeah, and I think it's a combination. You also don't see a bunch of people, employed to pick up trash and stuff. I mean, I think it's also a lot of self-regulation. People really enjoy these places, and they tend to take care of them.
Yeah.
So definitely a huge positive, and certainly been good for getting back in shape in the high mountain area. You gotta breathe a little bit more.
Training at elevation.
All right, so let's get into some redemptions. We had at least 4 that we confirmed today, and I've been working on a bunch of interesting ones. So I want to run through a couple of different ones. Let's start with yours. So you were a little bit of the last minute.
Yeah. Well, which one do you want to talk about? I did a couple today.
Yeah. Well, so I guess let's start with the most urgent. You had about 2 days to get this one squared away.
Yeah. So I really did I tiptoed. I kind of frolicked around this redemption. I knew I needed it, and I just did not pull the trigger. Kind of was busy, working on the company that helps people that are too busy to book their own flights, and so I couldn't book my own. So as of even a couple weeks ago, there's some options. There's JetBlue. I could have bought a ticket for relatively cheap, or transferred some Amex points to JetBlue and gotten away with maybe $10K and $80 in taxes and fees. Could have bought an AA1 cash and used statement credit against the cost of that, but waited so long that the options kind of became sparse. So what I ended up going with was just transferring some Amex points to British Airways. Luckily, connecting through Miami is a fairly direct path to Detroit. So that kept it in the bracket to keep me at 20,000 miles, which is last minute pretty nice. It could have been much worse, and I think I was out maybe $80 of taxes and fees. So considering everything, it was good. And also it preserved my American Airlines stash, which I am holding on to with a tight grip because I've got Cathay Pacific in mind heading back from Asia. So the sequencing and the way a point is not a point is not a point, because I had a couple other redemptions in mind.
Yeah. And so that's a really good thing to take away from this. British Airways is great because of the lack of close-in booking fee. Mm-hmm. Delta does waive that fee as well, but I've found that British Airways has been really, really nice close-in. It seems that most of the partners, especially American, but also TAM in Brazil and LAN, open up space last minute. Cathay Pacific opens up a lot of space last minute, and so does JAL. So the fact that those One World airline partners of British Airways are good about opening seats last minute means that if you're in a jam, you've got a really good combination of being able to do it. The one big thing to remember is business class is expensive with British Airways, and so you probably are not going to get last minute business for cheap. This flight was very low cost. But if you don't already have British Airways linked up to American Express, you need to do that in advance. So British Airways is an instant transfer partner, but you have to link your account for, and that's what happened with JetBlue, right? We just didn't have any accounts linked up.
Yep. Yeah. So kind of a word from experience here is, whatever transferable currencies you have, if you could even possibly want to transfer points to a particular airline program, just go ahead and get that hammered out. And that's something I did an okay job in the last week. I actually created a bunch of bogus airline accounts for places I may transfer to. I don't know how many programs now, but created some free accounts that just need to get those linked up. So when it is time to make the move, you can, toss a flight on hold, transfer the points, and then rock and roll.
Yep. Okay, so the next one, I want to come back to this trip to Europe in just a second, but I wanted to cover a sort of opposite side. Instead of the short direct, just get from point A to point B, this booking that we got finished today was like a mega Asia excursion, and it used it maxed out the United booking rules in a way that is pretty hard to do. I actually definitely broke the website, was not able to book this online, broke the first call agent's system. She wasn't able to do it. Web technical support had to actually push this through. So it was a pretty involved process. But, basically what happened is this is a trip from the U.S., from Austin, Texas, which is kind of a tricky airport. It's not a huge hub. So you got to connect somewhere else in the U.S. usually to get out of Austin, and then headed to Bangkok for the Dynamite Circle conference, and then had plans to check out another city, Chiang Mai in Thailand, and then Manila as well, and hop around the Philippines before heading back to the U.S. from the Philippines. So this is what's going to use your stopover and an open jaw on a round trip, both of which are allowed, and it should cost the same as 2 one-ways to the region. And so in this case, U.S. to Southeast Asia is $40,000 each way, 80,000 points. Very minimal taxes and fees, came out to like $122, $123 for a total of like 15 flights. A lot.
That's really good, especially to think often the taxes and fees that come from a municipality or an airport, and each additional connection, you're going to get taxed and have some fees.
So the key takeaway here is, number one, understand the stopover, how that works. You get to stop in one place and continue on to another place. And so in this case, it was from the U.S. to Bangkok. That was the end of the trip. And then there's an open job back from Chiang Mai with a stopover in Manila on the way to the U.S. So that's the way that you sort of conceptualize the routing. And the really key thing with this is there's 2 flights that we couldn't book included in this ticket. And if you book these little tiny flights with the ones, number one, it doesn't work.
Right.
And number two, if they do book it for you, it's going to cost you like an extra 30,000 or 40,000 miles. And so the little flights that you couldn't include here were from Bangkok to Chiang Mai, which is about $36 on AirAsia. And then there's also a flight from Manila, Philippines to Davao. Sure. And so the key thing to do when you're looking at one of these itineraries is try and figure out where the hub airport is that you're going to be able to get really cheap, like low-cost budget carrier flights out. And so that was ultimately what worked out, is probably like an extra $50 to $100 in side flights.
Don't let a $75 out-of-pocket flight stop you from having a great redemption.
Yep. And you could always get real adventurous and just take the bus,
Oh, man.
if you really wanted to.
Yeah, Southeastern Asian, any form of travel can be quite an adventure. I remember the train in Vietnam. I felt like we were going to come off the tracks. It was,
definitely. A
little
bit scary.
All right, what else? Do you want to talk about business class? Or do you want to talk about the little Amex shuffle we did getting me to Spain?
Yeah, let me run through this business class one, because I think this was interesting, because I had a great conversation with one of our customers today and kind of talking about United versus some of their Star Alliance partners. United doesn't have the best business class. It's really, I would say, close to the bottom of business class.
I think Skift actually did an index, and I think United was the worst in the U.S., and the U.S. compared to the Gulf carriers and the Asian carriers are worse. So, the bottom of the barrel.
Yeah. So obviously it's going to be a lot nicer than coach. You're going to have potentially a flatbed if you get the right aircraft, but the food's not going to be nearly up to the standard of the European or the Asian carriers. The amenities, just like the quality of service, the quality of the check-in process, there's a lot that goes into sort of the experience of business and first class. And I think United is definitely lacking. And the reason I wanted to bring this up is because the customer, that I was talking with definitely agreed with me on this. But we opted to do United business class anyways, because the way United prices this, you can pay only $57,500 for Europe to the U.S. and vice versa on United operated flights only. And as soon as you add any Star Alliance partner, the price goes up to $70,000. Sure. The reason that's really important to know is that sometimes you're not even getting the benefit of the long flight. So what you got to be careful of is a crappy United flight from Newark to Amsterdam, and then a 1-hour puddle jumper to Paris on Lufthansa or something like that. Yep. That's going to screw you over out of 17,500 points. Right. So you really got to watch. Poor math there, 12,500 points. So you really got to watch those connections and make sure that if you're going to include a partner, you get your money's worth and make it Lufthansa and do it across the ocean. So that's one big piece of it. The other thing is we had this conversation a little bit about what you can do if you don't have very many miles, or if you're traveling way more than you can earn by credit cards. And one of the options that's pretty attractive is Aeroplan, because Aeroplan lets you buy up to 50% of miles that you need. Now, the price is 3 cents a mile, which is not ideal. I mean, that's roughly what we're redeeming at, maybe 3 to 4. But if you've got half the miles already, say in your Amex account, you can transfer those out, pay for the extra 50%. And just for an example, like a one-way in business class is usually 75,000 miles on Aeroplan. There's some that are a little cheaper, but that's kind of a ballpark for redemptions to Asia and to Europe. And so if you had to buy half of those, or $37,500, that's going to cost you about $1,000, maybe $1,100. Not ideal, but if you really want business class, that's a very good deal.
That's a lot of essentially the cost of economy.
Right. And so the other piece of this is Aeroplan doesn't charge more for Lufthansa. And so instead of flying, don't ever fly United if you can help it when you're redeeming Aeroplan, because you're going to pay the same price in miles. And Lufthansa is continuing to be really strong with last minute availability.
Sure.
So what that means is if they don't think they're going to sell all the seats, if they've still got open business class a few weeks out, usually 10 to 14 days out, they open up a bunch of seats. And so if you're stuck on a United flight, double check the last week. A lot of times they'll let you change that. If you're upgrading from economy to business, they'll let you do it for free. Yep. And it's probably worth a $75 fee to be on a Lufthansa flight instead.
Absolutely, man. It's a great product.
Cool. All right, so let's wrap it up with your Air France redemption. This is the first time we've actually transferred to Air France for ourselves and redeemed one.
Yeah, kind of the same idea. Was kind of uncertain as to when I was going to go to Barcelona. I've got just a lot of moving parts right now. Personally, I have a wedding I've got to go to in Chicago, and wasn't sure how long festivities were going to lay over after that. Had to line up some accommodation in Barcelona, so I wasn't quite sure about my flight, because my time in Barcelona is going to be one of the more regimented trips I do, where I'm lined up for a month in a quasi program, living with some entrepreneurs there. So I was kind of keen on getting in at the right time, as opposed to just showing up like I normally would in a city. So I kind of had to wait to book my flight here. Delta availability was still there, but got kind of expensive.
How many points is expensive? What were you seeing?
More expensive. I was seeing 37.5. So it's not a horrible deal. But what I ended up getting was 25,000. So essentially, I paid about $90 in taxes and fees to protect 12,500 Amex points. And so my net there is about $85. I spent $85 more. I essentially bought almost 13,000 Amex points for $85,
which is amazing.
Which is a great deal.
So just to clarify for everybody, what you're saying is you didn't have. Let's say you don't have Delta points and you don't have Air France points, but you got Amex.
Sure.
You're choosing between the two, whether you're going to transfer them to Delta or Air France, and Delta's almost always more miles.
Sure.
Usually less taxes and fees, but
in
this case, you saved a significant number of Amex points by going Air France.
Yeah, absolutely. So I ended up going Air France. And another interesting thing about this one is I actually opted for the longer layover. I could have had kind of a medium layover where I could have maybe hung out at the airport in Paris, but I opted for that 20-hour itinerary from Detroit to Barcelona, where I think I get in around 11:30 in the morning, and my flight is around 10 p.m. Got a carry-on bag, so I'll be able to. Paris isn't a place that, on the surface, really interests me a whole lot, but it's a major city. A lot of people love it. May as well just, kick the can around, see what it's all about a little bit.
Explore a little bit.
Yeah, be a Parisian.
Sounds good. All right, so that's everything we got for this week's show. Again, show notes are going to be at abroaders.com/Columbia.
I have one announcement too.
Okay, all right.
Okay, so we actually heard a lot of stuff about the Udemy course from our people asking when it's going to come out, and I promise you, we've been working really hard at it, and we are the last mile. So optimistically, should come out within a couple weeks of this episode airing. If even sooner, that'd be better. But what that means for you is, if you have not already, go ahead and pre-register at abroaders.com/Udemy. And what we will do for you is we will guarantee you a discount. We still haven't finalized the price point, so we don't want to overextend ourselves there, but we will get you a discount.
Yep. You won't pay full price, and we're going to do one of the things that I think is the most important about the Udemy course, and one of the things we tried really hard with the lessons, is to make it more transparent how you can go about picking the right cards and how you can go about acquiring the right points for the trip you want. And so what we're going to do with everybody that's on the Udemy pre-registration list is we're going to do a round of expert recommendations.
Yep.
So you're going to still go through the process with us. You're going to still use the materials in the course to kind of pick your cards. But somebody from the Abroaders team is going to go through, look at your travel plans, look at your spending, and put together a customized list of recommendations so that you get off to the right start, get the right cards at the onset, and then you're already way ahead of the rest of the crowd. You've got the right type of points for where you're going to go.
Speaking of that, honestly, the people that come to us that gave it a go on their own, maybe a quarter of people have a decent round. I mean, just to be honest about it, maybe a quarter of people really, really optimize towards the travel, and the rest of the people just it takes a little bit of insight and a little bit of experience. So
and that's for the beginners too. That's for the people that did the first time. And one of the most important things with the first round, anyways, is that you don't bite off more than you can chew.
Right.
You get a couple of cards and you actually earn the bonus. That's more important, really, than crushing it and getting the exact maximum amount of points. I think a lot of people that come to us that have been doing this for a while, maybe have been listening for a while, a lot of times they do have a lot of great points.
Sure.
But if it's your first round, it pays to double check. Take a look at the course, and we'd love to walk you through, get the right recommendations for where you want to go, so you don't end up paying a bunch more in taxes and fees or get miles that are really hard to get.
Don't listen to what anyone is telling you about the card. You need to independently research it. All because Sam Jackson is telling you that the card is good and there's no blackout dates. It's marketing, man.
I think they're crushing it though. I think Capital One is doing really well.
But it's a shitty card to get compared to all the other cards. But yes, that's marketing.
So we'll be back next week, 8 a.m. Eastern Standard. Cheers from Europe next time for me.
Yeah, yep. I will just be getting in Barcelona.
Yeah, we might have to do it without you if you're still lost wandering around buying baguettes
buying baguettes and croissants.
All right, man. All right, we'll see you guys next week. Almost forgot. Very, very excited about this week's International Jam. This one is playing at all the hottest night locations here in Medellin, basically on repeat, and also in the taxi cab on the way to the nightclub. So you really get the rhythm. This is sort of a salsa jam. This guy's from Cartagena, which is the Caribbean coast of Colombia. His name is Joe Arroyo, and the track is called La Rebellion. And I definitely tapping foot to this every time.
Very, very catchy. Is one rarely will be ask a taxi driver, who is that? What is that?
Who's that guy? Yeah, and just wait till you see some of the dancing going on. Good luck keeping up, folks.
Cheers.
Cuando el tirano mandó las calles de Cartagena.
Hey, brothers, don't be shy. Hop over to the website and join our email list for exclusive travel hacking content. If you like what we're up to, the best way you can support the show is by leaving us a 5-star review on iTunes. Lastly, we would love to hear from you, so send your show feedback to Erik or AJ at abroaders.com. We will see you next week.